Hello everyone, I have a video of a journal that I completed for a custom order, and I am going to show it to you here today. It's with a vintage book, and it was called Old Mamselle's Secret. It says on the spine. It's kind of hard to read, but on the front it says Avon Edition, and there's this beautiful embossed design on the front. It was quite dull, so I used my Inca Gold paint. I watered it down and I used a paintbrush and just painted around the edges and some of the design to just kind of brighten it up a little bit. On the back I just spattered with the gold paint and stamped uniquely handmade, limited edition, and it has a couple of corners. I didn't do them on the back because the back ones weren't too bad, and I only had two of this color. And then I put on the Tim Holtz hitch fastener and a hair tie, and it has 3 signatures, and I didn't want to cover up this beautiful spine, so I just put an eyelet in the top and tied some ribbon and this blue fiber on there, and I'll go through it quickly. I'm sick today. I have a cold, so hopefully I'll be able to get through this okay. So on the inside I used music paper on the front and the back, and some crochet trim, and my "This Book Belongs To" stamp. And it has a bingo card, and I believe this is Tsunami Rose, and a banner here and a doily, just a little element cut from a book, and a little piece of seam binding, and things are stitched on. And there's a tag in there, and this is from, I think this is from Denise's Tattered Dream shop on Etsy. This is folded over, and I just stitched this edge just to reinforce it a little, stitched it down, put a few pieces of ephemera in here. And this is from the front of the book, and it was written someone's name there that I can't really read very well, although the writing is beautiful. And then it says December 1892. So it is an old book. The pages are copy dyed. There's some stamping, and there's quite a few vintage advertisements out of old magazines. So this one is something for sore muscles, and I put it on a piece of this graph index card. I've shown these in a recent video. I got those at Walmart for 50 cents for a pack of 100. And I fussy cut this little flower out of a vintage book and glued that on, and it's clipped on here with excuse me, clipped on with a Tim Holtz paper clip. And here's a vintage lady cut from a magazine, and she's reinforced with some white cardstock and stitched on as a pocket. Oh goodness. And Ephemera's Vintage Garden tag. Isn't that pretty? I love that. Some trim stitched on here with a little music paper strip of paper, a little vintage sticker, a little piece of a vintage lotto card, and a little heart punch. Hopefully that's it for the sneezes. Another stamp here, vintage ledger paper. This is stamped and cut out, and this is also stamped and punched out just for decoration, and this is for journaling. This is a flap. It can open up so you can journal inside, and there's some pretty trim stitched to it. There's a stamp there. All 3 signatures are designed pretty much the same way. There are some differences. This is one of those pieces that Jill Robertson made for me, and I think this might be the last piece, and I really liked them, so I actually bought the heart punch. That's where that came from. It was, I think it was 3 something. It was a Fiskars heart punch. It's this one, and it looks like it's the same thing she uses because the hearts are the exact same size, but it was on sale, so I paid under $4 for it, so now I can make my own, and I did. I think there's some in here. A vintage bridge score sheet, a vintage gift tag, and some pretty blue seam binding. vintage music paper, and this is stitched. This is the center of the signature, and this is stitched together as a pocket. Here's the bottom of this of the bridge pad that I cut off, and here's another one of those graph paper index cards. I stamped on that. And oh, I didn't mention this page that these things are on is from a book about ballet that I had gotten from the library. So each signature has one of these pages in it, and then I cut out some of the images of old-fashioned ballerinas that you'll see. And this, I thought this lined paper could be written on, so I just stitched this on. Fussy cut this out of a, I think this was a printable. And then this is a piece of fabric that I found in the remnants bin at Walmart. And so there are a few pieces of that in here. And this is just a flap you can lift up and write under it. More stamping. There's another flap. Some more trim stitched on. Ledger paper, vintage ledger. And here's another pocket. This is a stamped and cut out piece. Some crocheted trim and some printables here on parchment paper, and then this is a vintage miniature playing card. That's not the first signature. These are from the same ad. I just had to cut them apart. You'll be lovely too in a lovable bra. And this is a piece of muslin. No, it's actually a vintage linen piece. I had cut off part of it that had embroidery or lace or something on it and used it. So the rest of it was just plain. It's kind of like muslin. And I had coffee dyed it, and it's wrinkled. I didn't iron it. And then I stamped this postcard. I don't know if you can see it very well, but I stamped that on there and stitched it on as a pocket. And this is a Ephemeris Vintage Garden tag. And then this one is a pocket. And this is a tag that I made with coffee dyed paper, and put this vintage ad on it and stamped on it, so that can be journaled on. And then the back of each signature, each of them has a collage like this. There's tracing paper on the back of this one, and then this shape cut from a vintage book page. I think this is from Wuthering Heights. And then this is a ballerina from the book. Some trim, a few little flowers, and a card tucked in. The second signature has an ad on the front as a pocket, reinforced with some craft cardstock. This is a pocket, but it also is a flap that you can write on. You can't really write on this part because I stitched a bunch of stuff on there, but you can write on this part. There's some vintage tickets and a vintage sticker, some printables, and then this is some of the hearts that I punched out and stitched on a scrap of coffee dyed paper for journaling. There's another vintage ad. There's a little a bird, fussy cut out. This was stamped, and this is from Alicia Wheeler. We did a ephemera swap. Here's a vintage lady cut from a magazine, and she's on some craft card stock and glued on as a pocket. And then this is one of my vintage Betty Crocker coupons. Sometimes I stitch them or glue them. Usually glue them because I don't want to stitch through the vintage paper. I glue them to something that you can write on, but I left it so you can read the back of it, and if you want to write on it, you can glue it to something. But I left it for you. A vintage ticket and some ephemera and trim. Vintage ledger. This is vintage music paper and vintage book page, and I'm not sure what book that is. I think it's the index, or it was from the back of the book where the writing was really small. And this is a copy of a photo, and I punched an oval out with the mother and child to stitch on there, and a little ledger card to tuck in there and write on. I'll get that in later. Some trim stitched up there. This is vintage paper I've shown in a couple of my videos, I think. The Albany College of Pharmacy. I found these binders full of this paper in an antique store. Ogilvy Sisters specializes in hair beauty aids for all. And here's the center of the signature, and this one has little hearts, some fiber and seam binding, and another picture of a ballerina couple, and a piece of that fabric. This has scrapbook ledger paper stitched on and another fussy cut flower. I'll try to go through the rest of the book more quickly. This one has one of my vintage prescription pads and a coffee dyed tag. Another vintage ad here. This has some tulle stitched on there, or glued behind there. I guess it's stitched. Lux soap ad on tissue paper. There's another of the pockets, and this one has a Heidi Swapp stamp on it. And there's another ballerina with ledger paper behind and book paper. Third signature, another flap, some things stitched on, and this is where the negative of where I punched out some hearts. Be a Nurse ad with a couple of my hearts glued on. This is a Tsunami Rose pocket and tag. A little vintage ad there. Vintage sticker. And here's a little scrap of that muslin that had the Heidi Swapp stamped on it. I gathered it up and stitched it on this little pocket. I didn't put anything in that pocket. Well, I think these things were supposed to be in there. Just laying on the table here. So there they are. There's another ballerina page, and this is the heart strip that I made, and another flap of fabric. There's a little piece there, and then this perfume bottle. Some hearts glued on here. Another strip. Another pocket. More things tucked in there. This is an ad for Sun-Made raisins. It just fit right in there nicely, so I glued that in. And then on this side, I don't remember if this was a washing machine ad or what, but this poor lady is suffering and struggling with her laundry. Another piece of the fabric stamped and stitched on with an Ephemeris Vintage Garden tag. And then the last little ballerina collage with this is from The Prince and the Pauper, Mark Twain. And music paper on the back, my signature. And there we go. I hope you enjoyed seeing this. And I will be making another book very similar to this one. And let me show you the cover. It's this plain green cover, very old book. It says George Eliot because it's a book of George Eliot's works. But I'm going to cover it with this image and that probably. And that's the start of the book. And I got the pages cut, but the design of the pages will be very similar to this. I'm trying to, as I do an order or a swap, I try to make one for my shop with a similar design because I can make it quicker if I just kind of copy and don't have to think about everything each time. So I do one book for an order or a swap and then one book for my shop, and then the next book will be completely different. I don't like doing the same thing all the time. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed seeing this, and stay tuned because this maybe in about a week I'll have this one done and I'll show you that one. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.